7, and what is the fate of professional soccer in Miami? We're learning more today after a chaotic marathon hearing at the Miami City Commission last night, and after several hours of contentious debate and some emotional pleas from David Beckham and his partner Jorge Mas, commissioners decided in the end to not decide.
Two commissioners, including Ken Russel, openly said they would vote no, even as they voiced their frustration over transparency in the process and the proposal.
Why are we negotiating on the dais? Where have we been for the last 3 months? We should have been doing this, and our administration should have had the natural curiosity and the tenaciousness for our residents to fight and negotiate so that the time this came to us, it was a great deal. That all those things were considered, that we could get out the rubber stamp with confidence. I'm a surfboard salesman, I'm not a real estate lawyer.
And Commissioner Ken Russel joins us now. So, Commissioner, a lot of people echoing that sentiment. Critics saying, why wasn't the commission prepared? Why weren't commissioners prepared in the first place? And if there were questions that hadn't been answered, why weren't they provided ahead of time before this meeting was even held?
Well, there was a disconnect in communication there, I think, because what we were intended to vote on was simply to ask our voters whether we should put this out without a competitive bid, whether we should work directly with this management group, with this development group. And so a lot of folks thought we didn't need all of that information to ask that question, to vote to put that on November's ballot. But for me, I need to have those answers before I put it to the voters.
What are your biggest concerns? What do you not know now from Beckham and Mas and their group that you need to know before you could come around and be a yes?
Well, there's some answers within the development deal that don't necessarily make it the best for Miami. But the rumors that are out there, the perception that's out there from a very rightfully skeptical community doesn't look good. And that's unfortunate because the tenets of this deal could be very good. And it's not a giveaway. It's not a Marlins deal. I've seen that, but my residents haven't seen that. And so as these details come out and people get to know more and more, they get more comfortable with the concept. They may like it, they may not, but that's why it goes to the voters in a referendum. But before it gets there, I need to be comfortable with it.
Is there any concern amid all of this kind of chaos that Beckham and Mas might take their business elsewhere?
Of course, and I really think our mayor has taken a big step. He's a new mayor here. He's been a commissioner for 8 years, and I've worked with him. I really appreciate his vision, and I like that he's thinking big for Miami, because this could be transformational, but it's a risk. It's probably the biggest land project that we've ever done. And so if we don't get it right, maybe they do go elsewhere. But we believe Miami has a lot to offer. They believe they've found the right logistical spot for the stadium. After all this time, we just have to work together to get the details right for the voters to choose.
How much pressure was there on you last night? Because as we watched the hearing and our newsroom was gripped to the live feed that was coming in, you could tell that your fellow commissioners were exasperated. At some point, getting up and walking away and then coming back, they were clearly upset that you just couldn't come around and say yes and put this on the ballot in November. How much pressure were you getting, and how difficult was it to say what you had to say in front of David Beckham? I mean, one of the biggest sports superstars in the world.
I have to say, David Beckham got there around 1, 2 o'clock. We had already been going since 8:30 in the morning, but he stayed there 10, 11 hours and never looked at his phone once. He was engaged, he was interested, he was curious, he spoke incredibly to the people. And after that, even though it wasn't the decision that they wanted to hear, he was very gracious when he spoke to me directly afterwards. Yes, there's a lot of pressure, but it wasn't just me. There were 2 commissioners that were a solid no. There were 2 commissioners that were a solid yes. And that left me as the swing vote to really decide whether this would go to the ballot. You
were like the Anthony Kennedy of the Miami.
I don't know if I wanted to be called the Anthony Kennedy of anything, but I was the swing vote, yes.
And you voted no. You voted that you want to wait until Wednesday.
I voted for a deferral of the item. But if they weren't willing to at least come to the table with the specific things that I needed, I was willing to be a no last night. Because I believe they have it in them, because they are a good group, and what they are offering is quite potentially generous for the city. But I believe it should be more than fair. It should be way more than the minimum legal amount they're required to give for fair market value. I believe it should be great for the city of Miami. It should make up for all the deals we've done in the past.
What about the residents who say this is just a land grab?
Well, that's a misnomer for sure, because at the very least, I mean, with this, not to advocate for the deal, but the tenets of it are not. I mean, it's all going to be taxed. And there's going to be no tax subsidy. And that was one that was very big for me. There will be no taxpayer dollars in this project, and that's going to be in the ballot language, so they can't get out of it. It can't be negotiated later. So that's how you're going to make it legally binding? Yes. And that's why what we decided yesterday was so important. They say we can wait till it's time to negotiate the lease. The leases are negotiable, but what's in that ballot language, when if the voters say yes, that can't be changed.
So Wednesday is the day. Are we going to have an answer on Wednesday whether you're going to allow this to go forward and take this to the ballot in November?
I hope we'll have a definitive answer one way or the other for sure. I believe that I've been clear about what I'm looking for to feel comfortable to allow the voters to have a fair shot at this, and we'll be talking between now and then.
Well, it was interesting to hear you last night talk about your background in sales as a surfboard salesman, not a real estate attorney. This is complicated stuff, and I think that a lot of your constituents and people all over South Florida can relate to that, wanting to get it right. So thanks so much for coming in and talking to us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Ken Russel, City Commissioner of Miami. We'll be watching and find out what happens next week on Wednesday.